What's going on, guys? Jordan Richards here, back for another video. Now today's gonna be another sort of tutorial. I want to throw it back. I started with lighting. Lighting's very important, but I wanted to kind of go through the basics of the camera. How does the camera work? Some people, they pick up a camera and what do? They drop it on auto and they just do whatever they're gonna do. Camera takes care of the rest. Their job is to record, snap pictures, whatever it is they're doing. I'm here to kind of change that. I'm here to teach a little bit more than just what is a camera, how do you turn it on, this type of things. We're going to get all past that. We're going to assume you know how to turn it on. We're going to assume you know how to, do a bit with it. I'm going to teach you how to do things manually so you understand what you're doing, when you're doing it, and how it impacts your shots. Now, this would be more geared towards video because obviously this is YouTube. It's a video platform, but I'm here to teach you a little bit more about cameras and why they are designed the way they are. Now, the first thing I want to talk about in this camera basics number 1, it's called Aperture. Aperture it's kind of hard to describe, and it's difficult if you don't understand what's going on, and I wish I had a second camera to show you, but I don't. But basically what Aperture is, or sometimes what's called f-stop. And every single lens that you buy for your camera has a different aperture rating. And it always tells you technically the lowest rating, which means the most wide open. Now I'm going to get into that a little bit more. But basically your aperture or f-stop is an f followed by a number. Maybe it's f4, maybe it's f1.2, maybe it's f10. And it ranges, anywhere from f1.2 all the way to f22. And what that really means is it tells you how much light is going to be coming into your lens. So you use the aperture to basically determine how much light are you going to let in through your lens, how big or how small that lens is opening to allow light to take pictures, video, whatever is for your shot. So right now you can only see a tiny part of me. That's to represent what an aperture of f22 is. So you're only letting a tiny amount of light relative to the maximum amount of light for your shot. If you make it what's called as wide open, as absolutely big an aperture as your lens can carry, for this lens it's f4. So I have it set to f4. Why do I do that? I'm in a dark room right now. It's a studio setup. I have lighting, but it's still dark in here. So I need to get the maximum aperture available to me. In this lens it's f4, and so you can see it's bigger now. You can see more of me, and so that's kind of what it's representing, is how open is that lens. And so what it tells you is basically how much light do you want to let in. The lower the aperture, the more wide open your lens is going to be, the more light's going to be available to you, the easier it is to take pictures in low light. All of that applies to aperture. Now, the other reason why aperture is very important is it determines your focus plane. And so this is very technical. Now, I'm not going to go crazy with, what a focus plane is and how different apertures impact your focus plane and all that stuff, but basically what it means is the lower your aperture, the shallower that plane of focus is. So this is an f4, like I mentioned. If I was to use an f1.2, the background behind me would be a lot blurrier. And so that's why, if you were to look up prices of lenses, if you want to buy a lens with an aperture of 1.2, that means that lens is massive. Like, it's going to be a big lens and it's going to be able to open very, very wide. Because it's great in low light, it's going to be a big, professional, powerful lens, and you're going to get beautiful background blurs out of a lens like that. And that's why they get to be so expensive. The bigger that aperture is, or in this case, how low that aperture rating goes, you're going to pay more money for that. So kind of the baseline is f4 for kind of your kit lenses and things like that. But when you get professional, you get into f1.6, f1.2, and that's when you get the $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 lenses, because they're very, very good in low light. They're extremely sharp, and they have a very shallow plane of focus and beautiful bokeh, which is kind of like the background blur. It's a Japanese word for kind of those little bubbles you see when there's light, and it just looks very, very cinematic and beautiful. So that's kind of like a brief explanation of what aperture is, and I wanted to kind of run through that with you. So basically, if you have an aperture of f4 to 22, f4 is going to be more wide open, allowing more light, and you're going to have a shallower depth of field, and the background's going to be more blurred out. Conversely, let's say you want to do real estate photos, real estate photography, things like that. You want to be shooting between f11 and f22. Now again, that can be more difficult because, again, that aperture is going to be smaller. But what that does is it allows for a larger plane of focus. So when you take a picture, you're not going to have a background that's blurry and you're only going to see, let's say, the island or chair or something in front of you. You're going to be able to see the whole picture completely in focus, And that's how you take certain pictures, landscapes, whatever you want. You have to make it shoot for a little bit longer to allow that light to come in, but it allows for everything to be in focus. But when you're doing like a one-on-one video, you usually want somewhere between f4, maybe to f2. When you get into the 1.6, 1.5, 1.2, sometimes it can be so shallow that like your nose might be in focus, but your ears are out of focus, or like parts of your body will be in focus, others weren't, because that actual plane of focus is so shallow. It doesn't allow for your entire face to be in focus. That's why I'm using an f4. It's also one of the only lenses I have, but even if I had a lens that was a little bit better, I'd probably still stick with f4, maybe go down to f2.8. And so it sounds confusing. It's a lot to digest in one sit down, but I wanted to kind of explain it a little bit for you so you get a better picture. But again, aperture, it impacts two things. And the reason why you need to know how to control it is that way you control your focus, whether you want to focus on one subject or you want to focus on the entire picture. Again, the entire picture, you want to do f11 to about f22. If you want to focus on one subject, that's when you get down into the, f6, f4, f2. That'll help you get that nice, beautiful background all blurry, and then you get your focus on that one subject. So I just want to kind of give you guys a quick tutorial about that. I'm going to get into shutter speed, I'm going to get into ISO, I'm going to get into frame rates too for video, because all that's important, but this is just about aperture. And so I wanted to kind of give you guys a little tutorial on aperture and why it's so important to understand. Make sure you guys subscribe for more content, like this video, and share it with friends who are trying to learn photography. Again, my name is Jordan Richards, and I'm here to help you become better in any way you want to. I'm focusing on video, cinematography, videography, photography, how cameras work, running through the basics, and I'm going to do a whole series about this, so hopefully by the end of it you guys learned a lot. But of course, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me, drop me a comment, reach out to me either on Instagram, at JRichImaging, Twitter, it's at @YourBoyJRich, anything you want, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to answer more questions. So thank you guys so much for watching, subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys with another video next week. Peace.